Until recently, those who believed in man-made global warming couldn't explain the internationally accepted data which proved that the Earth had warmed and cooled significantly in the last millennium, regardless of fossil fuel usage. This climate data showed there was a significant increase in temperature in what is known as the medieval warm period. This warming meant that wine was exported from northern England and that Vikings were able to settle in Greenland. The data also showed that the warm period was followed by a mini ice age, which saw a drop in global temperatures and Greenland covered in ice. These changes show that world temperatures fluctuate regardless of human activity. But in 2000, new research apparently contradicted this view. Professor Michael Mann produced the hockey stick graph, which discounted the medieval warm period and mini ice age. Professor Mann claimed that the Earth's temperature had been consistent until the beginning of the 20th century, when because of human activity it increased rapidly.
The IPCC, the UN panel, has come up with 4 reports. And every report had something funny about it. In the 3rd report, they came up with a graph called the hockey stick, which pretended to show that the 20th century was the warmest in the last 1,000 years. But it turned out that it was based on bad statistics. It was really, really bad science.
A couple of years ago, 2 Canadians, a fellow by the name of McKittrick and another guy by the name of McIntyre, neither of whom are scientists, but one of whom is a fairly accomplished mathematician, looked at the data.
I'd seen hockey stick graphs in many business promotions. Typically they are .com sales or profit projections. And while academics may not be familiar with hockey stick graphs, businessmen sure are, and businessmen tend to be quite suspicious of them. Usually there's a trick to them where the blade occurs.
When the 2001 report came out, it was featured very prominently in the report. As a result, the hockey stick graph became central to the debate about global warming. 2003, I got an email from this fellow named Stephen McIntyre, who I'd never met before, but he'd heard my name. He had worked out what he thought was the method that they used, and he'd obtained the data set from Mann.
We met halfway between Toronto and Guelph out near the Toronto airport.
And he had this big stack of papers, and he showed me his notes, and I thought, well, this is important stuff that he's doing, and here's an outsider, a retired businessman basically, who has no experience publishing in academic journals, and so I agreed to help him work through the math and stats and write up the results and try to get them into print so that people would start understanding what he was doing.
What I'd found was that there was some problem in how Mann was doing what's called the principal components calculation.
He had tried to reproduce the basic calculations, just some of the basic averaging steps, and was getting very different results from what was in the hockey stick papers.
When I used correctly calculated principal components, I didn't get a hockey stick.
So then he thought maybe he had some data wrong. So he had gone back to the original sources that were cited.
Noticed many other problems with Mann's data. There just seemed to be something wrong with this data set.
There were a lot of minor and sometimes major discrepancies between the underlying series and the data that was actually used in the Nature paper. So correcting those discrepancies as much as we could, we just couldn't get anything that looked like the hockey stick.
So I emailed Mann in September 2003 saying, is this really the data set that you used for your study? And could you confirm that? And I haven't been able to replicate your results. And he wrote back and said that he was much too busy and important to answer this or any other questions. So I went through this step by step and found what in effect was a programming error. Quite to the surprise of the academic community that would pick hockey sticks out of random data. Let's say that you had a telephone book with 8,000 series in it one of which was a hockey stick shape. What Mann's method would do is it would find that one hockey stick shape series out of the phone book. So if your result is that you got a hockey stick, you couldn't ascribe any particular statistical significance to that result.
The views changed. I mean, we got a series of papers into print in good journals. We had a lot of people in the climatology field, once they got past their initial suspicions and took time to study what we were doing, realized that yes, there was some technical errors in the hockey stick, that these did undermine the conclusions.
The IPCC relied on the hockey stick as its iconic statement for the third assessment. By the fourth assessment, it realized it was a hot potato, so it dropped it.
Well, the hockey stick has been thoroughly discredited. The 20th century is certainly not the warmest in 1,000 years. There was agriculture in Greenland, and they were growing wine grapes in England, so in Yorkshire. So, it was clearly warmer, and we also have scientific data to show this.